A teacher tells the billionaire, "Sir, your son wrote something about you in this letter." But what happens next? What if the most powerful man in the city discovered that his 8-year-old son saw him as a complete stranger? Theodore Blackstone owned half the buildings in downtown Chicago, commanded boardrooms with a single glance, and could move millions with one phone call. But on this crisp October morning, as autumn leaves danced outside Lincoln Elementary's windows, he was about to learn something that would shake him to his core. Mrs. Helen Rodriguez, a soft-spoken third-grade teacher with 20 years of experience, clutched a small piece of notebook paper in her weathered hands. Her fingers trembled slightly as she waited in the principal's office, knowing the words written in crayon would either build a bridge or burn one completely. The letter contained just 12 sentences, written by little Jamie Blackstone during a class assignment about heroes. What the boy had written about his father would change everything between them forever. Sometimes the most powerful truths come from the smallest voices. Where are you watching from tonight? Theodore had built his empire from nothing, working 18-hour days since Jamie was born. Blackstone Industries dominated the Chicago skyline, but Theodore rarely saw his own home before 10 at night. His wife, Catherine, had died when Jamie was 3, leaving Theodore to navigate fatherhood alone while running a billion-dollar company. He'd convinced himself that providing for Jamie was the same as being present for him. Mrs. Rodriguez had taught hundreds of children, but Jamie Blackstone haunted her thoughts. The quiet boy with his father's sharp green eyes always sat in the back row, perfectly behaved but strangely distant. While other children chattered about weekend adventures with their parents, Jamie spoke only of his nanny, Mrs. Patterson, who'd been caring for him since his mother's passing. The boy was brilliant, reading at a 5th grade level, solving math problems that stumped his classmates, but there was a loneliness in him that broke her heart. The assignment had been simple: write about your hero and why they're special to you. Most children wrote about Superman, or their grandmother, or the firefighter who visited their class. Jamie had stared at his paper for 20 minutes before finally writing. When Mrs. Rodriguez read his words that evening, she'd called in sick the next day, too emotional to face her classroom. Theodore's assistant had been surprised by the teacher's call. Mr. Blackstone didn't attend school functions. He'd missed Jamie's Christmas play, his spring concert, even the father-son science fair. His calendar was always full of investor meetings and corporate acquisitions. But Mrs. Rodriguez had insisted this couldn't wait, and something in her voice made his assistant clear an hour that afternoon. Now Theodore sat across from the teacher, checking his watch twice while she carefully unfolded the letter. He assumed Jamie had gotten in trouble or needed extra tutoring. Perhaps the school wanted a donation for new computers or a library renovation. He'd written checks before to solve Jamie's school issues without getting personally involved. "Mr. Blackstone," Mrs. Rodriguez began gently, "Jamie wrote something beautiful, but it's also heartbreaking. Before I share this with you, I want you to know that your son is an exceptional child. He's kind, intelligent, and has so much love to give." Theodore shifted impatiently. "Is there a problem with his grades? Behavioral issues?" "No, sir. Jamie is perfect in every way except one: he doesn't really know his father." She smoothed the paper carefully. The assignment was about heroes. Other children wrote about family members, community workers, or fictional characters. But Jamie... She paused, gathering her courage. "Jamie wrote about you, Mr. Blackstone, but not in the way you might expect." Theodore's phone buzzed with urgent messages, but something in Mrs. Rodriguez's expression made him silence it. "What did he write?" "He wrote about watching you from his bedroom window when you come home late at night. He wrote about hoping someday you might read him a bedtime story like the fathers in his books do." Her voice grew softer. "He wrote that his hero is his daddy, but his hero doesn't know him yet." The words hung in the air like a confession, and Theodore felt something crack inside his chest. Mrs. Rodriguez handed Theodore the letter with shaking hands. The paper was standard elementary school notebook paper, with uneven lines drawn by Jamie's careful 8-year-old penmanship. Theodore's breath caught as he read the title written in blue crayon, "My Hero Who Lives in My House." "My hero is my daddy, Theodore Blackstone," the letter began. "He is very tall and wears nice suits, and everyone says he is important. I see him sometimes when Mrs. Patterson makes me go to bed, but I stay awake and look out my window. He sits in his car in our driveway and talks on his phone, and I think maybe he is tired from being a hero all day." Theodore's hands trembled as he continued reading. The letter described how Jamie had asked Mrs. Patterson to tell him stories about his father's childhood, how he'd collected newspaper clippings about Blackstone Industries and kept them under his pillow. The boy wrote about wondering if his daddy liked chocolate chip cookies or vanilla ice cream, about wanting to show him the model airplane he'd built, about practicing piano extra hard, hoping his father might hear him play someday. "I think my daddy saves lots of people with his hero work because he is never home to save me from nightmares," Jamie had written. "But that's okay because heroes have to help everyone, not just their little boys. I hope when I grow up, I can be a hero like him, and maybe then we can talk about hero things together." Mrs. Rodriguez watched Theodore's face crumble as he read the final lines. "I love my hero daddy even though he doesn't know my favorite color is blue, or that I lost my first tooth last month, or that I still sleep with mommy's picture under my pillow. Maybe someday, when I'm bigger and more important, he will have time to be my daddy too and not just my hero." "He's been carrying this letter around for 3 days," Mrs. Rodriguez whispered. "Every day during lunch, he takes it out and reads it to himself. Yesterday, I found him crying in the coat closet because another child asked if his father was ever coming to school." Theodore couldn't speak. The empire he'd built suddenly felt like a prison. Every missed dinner, every declined invitation to Jamie's school events, every time he'd chosen a board meeting over his son's bedtime story crashed over him like a wave. He'd become exactly the kind of father he'd promised Catherine he'd never be. "Mr. Blackstone," Mrs. Rodriguez said gently, "Jamie doesn't need a hero. He needs his daddy." The simple truth hit him harder than any business failure ever had. He'd spent 5 years building wealth for Jamie's future while missing Jamie's entire childhood. His son was 8 years old and they were strangers living in the same house. If this moment touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up. Theodore folded the letter carefully and slipped it into his suit pocket. "I need to see him. Right now." Mrs. Rodriguez glanced at the clock. "He's in art class, but Mr. Blackstone." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "This isn't going to be fixed with one conversation. Are you prepared to change everything about how you've been living?" Theodore stood frozen in the hallway outside Jamie's classroom, watching through the small window as his son painted quietly at a corner table. The boy looked smaller than he remembered, more fragile. Jamie was working on a landscape, a big house with 2 figures, one large and one small, standing far apart in different windows. The distance between them on the paper reflected the distance Theodore had created in their real life. Mrs. Rodriguez had arranged for them to meet in the art room after class. As the other children filed out, chattering about their projects, Jamie looked up and froze when he saw his father standing in the doorway. The boy's eyes went wide with worry, and he immediately began cleaning his paintbrushes with nervous efficiency. "Hi, Dad," Jamie whispered, not quite meeting Theodore's eyes. "Am I in trouble? Did I do something wrong at school?" The question pierced Theodore's heart. His 8-year-old son's first assumption was that he'd done something wrong, that his father had come to school to scold rather than spend time with him. How many times had their brief interactions centered around Theodore correcting Jamie's posture at formal dinners or reminding him to speak quietly when important guests visited? "Nobody," Theodore said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're not in trouble. I read your letter. The one you wrote about heroes." Jamie's face flushed red, and he looked down at his painting. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say anything bad. Mrs. Rodriguez said it was supposed to be about heroes, and you're the only hero I know, but I know you're too busy to." "Jamie, stop." Theodore knelt beside his son's chair, bringing himself to the boy's eye level for the first time he could remember. "You didn't say anything wrong. You said everything right." The boy looked up cautiously. "I did." Theodore pulled out the letter and smoothed it on the art table between them. "You wrote that you hope someday, when you're bigger and more important, I'll have time to be your daddy. But Jamie, you're already the most important thing in my whole world. I'm the one who forgot that. Jamie's eyes filled with tears. But you have to work. Mrs. Patterson says you work so hard because you love me. Mrs. Patterson is right. I do work because I love you. But I forgot that the best way to love you isn't just to work for you, it's to be with you. Theodore's own eyes welled up. Can you tell me about your favorite color? And your loose tooth? And the airplane you built? For the first time in years, Jamie's face lit up with genuine excitement. He scrambled to his backpack and pulled out a small red model airplane, his words tumbling over each other as he explained every detail of its construction. Theodore listened to every word, marveling at his son's intelligence and creativity, feeling ashamed at how much of Jamie's life he'd missed. And Daddy, Jamie whispered, would you maybe want to hear me play piano sometime? I've been practicing the song Mommy used to sing to me. Theodore's heart broke and mended simultaneously. I would love that more than anything in the world. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments. As they walked out of school together, Theodore made a decision that would change both their lives forever. That evening, Theodore did something unprecedented. He turned off his phone and canceled every meeting for the next day. For the first time since Catherine's death, the Blackstone mansion wasn't eerily quiet when the sun set. Instead, it was filled with the sound of Jamie's laughter as his father helped him with homework at the kitchen table, while Mrs. Patterson prepared dinner with tears of joy in her eyes. Tell me about your friends at school, Theodore said, genuinely curious about his son's life. Jamie's face glowed as he described his best friend Marcus, who was teaching him to skateboard, and his reading partner Lucy, who liked the same adventure books he did. He told his father about the school talent show coming up, how he'd been practicing piano but had assumed no one would come to watch him perform. I'll be in the front row, Theodore promised, and Jamie's smile could have powered the entire city. But the real test came at bedtime. Theodore had never read Jamie a bedtime story. That had always been Mrs. Patterson's job. As they climbed the stairs together, Jamie clutched a worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are, his mother's favorite book that he'd been saving for years, hoping someday his father might read it to him. Theodore sat on the edge of Jamie's bed, the book feeling foreign in his hands. He hadn't read a story out loud since his own childhood. But as he began to read about Max and the wild things, Jamie curled up beside him, and Theodore felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Daddy, Jamie whispered when the story ended. Are you going to read to me tomorrow too? Every night you want me to, Theodore promised. And maybe you can read some to me too. Mrs. Rodriguez tells me you're an excellent reader. Jamie beamed with pride. I've been practicing extra hard. I wanted to read you one of my stories someday. You write stories? About a boy who goes on adventures with his dad, Jamie said shyly. They solve mysteries together and help people and have the best time. Theodore's throat tightened with emotion. I'd love to hear one of your stories tomorrow. Maybe we could go on a real adventure this weekend. Just you and me. Really? Jamie's eyes sparkled with disbelief and hope. Really? We could go to the museum, or the zoo, or anywhere you want. As Theodore tucked Jamie in and kissed his forehead, something he hadn't done since Jamie was 3, the boy whispered, Daddy? I'm really happy you came to school today. Me too, buddy. Me too. Theodore spent that night cleaning out his home office, moving his desk so Jamie could do homework nearby while he worked. He called his assistant and restructured his schedule, delegating more responsibilities to his capable team. For the first time in years, he remembered why he'd built his company, to provide security for his family, not to escape from it. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. The next morning brought the ultimate test. Theodore had promised to drive Jamie to school, something he'd never done before. As they pulled up to Lincoln Elementary together, other children stared in amazement. Jamie practically glowed with pride as he waved goodbye to his father, shouting, "See you tonight, Dad," loud enough for everyone to hear. 3 months later, Theodore stood backstage at Lincoln Elementary's talent show, adjusting Jamie's bow tie before his piano performance. The transformation in both their lives had been remarkable. Theodore's business hadn't suffered from his new schedule. In fact, with better time management and a renewed sense of purpose, Blackstone Industries had thrived. But more importantly, the Blackstone house had become a home again. "Are you nervous, buddy?" Theodore asked, kneeling to Jamie's level. "A little," Jamie admitted. "But I'm excited too. I've been practicing the song Mommy used to sing, just like I promised." Theodore's eyes misted. Over the past 3 months, they'd spent countless evenings at the piano together, with Jamie teaching his father the lullaby Catherine had sung every night. Now their son would share that precious memory with the whole school community. As Jamie walked onto the stage and began to play, Theodore sat in the front row exactly where he'd promised, his phone silenced and tucked away. The melody floated through the auditorium, soft, sweet, and filled with love. Other parents wiped away tears as the 8-year-old's small fingers moved across the keys with confident grace. But the real magic happened when Jamie reached the chorus. Instead of singing alone, he looked directly at his father and nodded. Theodore stood up, walked to the stage, and for the first time in public, sang the lullaby with his son. His voice was shaky with emotion, but it blended perfectly with Jamie's clear soprano. The entire auditorium was transfixed by this moment of pure father-son connection. When the song ended, the standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. But Theodore only had eyes for Jamie, who was beaming with joy and pride. As they hugged on stage, Jamie whispered in his father's ear, "I love you, Daddy. Thank you for learning my favorite song." "I love you too, son. Thank you for teaching me how to be your father." Mrs. Rodriguez watched from the wings with tears streaming down her face. In 20 years of teaching, she'd never seen such a complete transformation. The lonely boy who used to sit in the back of her classroom was now confident, radiant, and secure in his father's love. And the distant billionaire had become the devoted dad Jamie had always needed. After the show, as families gathered for refreshments, other parents approached Theodore with amazement. The man who had once been known only as an intimidating businessman was now the father who helped with classroom parties, volunteered for field trips, and never missed a school event. Theodore still worked hard, but now he worked smart. His evenings belonged to Jamie, homework time, story time, and long conversations about everything from dinosaurs to dreams. Weekends were for adventures, visiting museums, building model planes, and exploring Chicago together. They'd even started a tradition of cooking breakfast together every Saturday, something Catherine would have loved. As they drove home that night, Jamie clutched his talent show ribbon and chattered excitedly about their weekend plans. Theodore listened to every word, marveling at how much joy could fit into one small person's stories. Sometimes the greatest success isn't measured in profits or property, but in the trust of a child who finally knows his hero is also his dad. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales about the moments that change everything. Thank you for joining Jamie and Theodore on their journey. May we all remember that love is spelled Time.